fenugreek, spinach, lamb curry. So I'm using dried methi, Kasuri methi, silverbeet, and lamb shoulder. Oh, that's super tangy and meaty. Oh, that's exceptional. Holy moly. If I was in the position to have fresh methi or fresh fenugreek leaf, I would be using that. Because I can't access that here in Margaret River at the moment, what I'm doing is I am using silverbeet as the body of fresh green leafy bitterness, and then I'm going to be combining that with some of the dried methi. Dried fenugreek on its own is it's really dark, it's quite heavy, and it's quite bitter. So combining that with silverbeet is going to lighten it up. So the first step is just to cut the lamb and get my knife sharpened. But I'm cutting it into chunks. I'm keeping the fat. This is just over 1 kilo of lamb. Here he comes. We say that Chippy speaks protein. Oh, hello. If you say chicken or bacon, he knows what he's saying. Out you come. Here you go. Cheeky boy. All right, so I'm just covering the meat under a fresh cloth. And the next step is to cook down the silverbeet. So I'm going to just really roughly chop it, stems and all, and pop it into my big rice pot with a little bit of water. And steam it down. So not heaps of water, just enough to ensure that it wilts with the lid on. So it's like 1/3 of a cup. It only takes a couple of minutes if you just put it on to like a medium-high heat. Now while that is doing what it's going to do, I'm actually going to get out my mixy thing. One of the keys to this recipe is ensuring that the spinach and the fenugreek is minced down, I don't know, what do you say? Sort of made into a paste. So effectively pureeing the silverbeet and the dried methi together, or the dried fenugreek, it changes the texture of the bitterness in the greens. So the way that a product is presented to you influences how you taste it, and that includes size, shape, the dice, the cut, the cook. The bird's happy about the rain. In order to intensify the umami quality of the lamb that we're going to engender through browning, pureeing those bitter greens and then cooking them into the remnant of the browning fat with a little bit of hing, a little bit of chili, a little bit of salt, it will allow the bitterness in the greens to actually infiltrate into the masala and into the lamb. So it creates a cohesion that's harder to gain aromatically if we leave the silverbeet as chunks and sort of just put the methi in through the masala. This step of pureeing together the silverbeet and the fenugreek is vital to the end result of taste. Vital, I make it sound like it's life or death. Kind of is. So that's basically done. See that? It just has to be softened. So I am going to transfer this to my mixie with 3 strong pinches of methi. You might need a little water, we'll see. There we go. It's smells really rich. Like if bitterness could be rich, then that would be the equation. Silver beet plus dried methi. This is getting cast aside, and I'm going to use a pressure cooker to brown the lamb. So this browning process, salt, chili, cloves, hing, that's how we're going to start, plus mustard oil, which is going to start off the browning. So onto high heat, a couple of tablespoons of mustard oil and a little bit of vegetable oil, because it will allow the heat to increase, so it'll let us get the base of the pan a little hotter. Vegetable oil carries a higher heat than mustard oil does. So spice-wise, we're going to start with a little bit of salt. I always use salt in my browning. Well, nearly always. So a teaspoon. This is Kashmiri chili, so a mild chili, so we're going to use a teaspoon. Cloves, nice and pungent, so I'm going to use, say 5. And then some asafoetida, hing. Garlic and onion replacement, but more than that, it's like a very pungent seasoning. Already smells like a street side dub bar, which is perfect. As soon as that's hot, which you can hear that it is, this meat is all going to go in. I'm not going to move it around too much because I want it to catch and caramelize, and I want there to be brown charred pieces stuck to the pressure cooker, because once this is browned, I'm going to remove it, then I'm going to put in the silver beet and methi and brown that in the juices, and then I'm going to re-put the meat, put some masala and a few extra little tricks and bits, and pressure cook that together. So this takes a little bit to brown, because I was discussing before with Trav, the gas, like the heat I get from my gas stovetop is a little underwhelming. And what that means is that when you put a bulk of produce into a pot at high heat, the produce cools the oil and the vessel at a higher rate than the heat can actually maintain. So instead of the heat matching and keeping the sizzle high, it sort of dulls and then it has to build back up again, which is kind of annoying. But I say that because if your stovetop does the same, like give it the time. This is so much better, these dishes, if they're given the proper caramelization, if you take them through the whole process. Thanks, buddy. Oh yeah. Can you pour me a glass before you take the bottle? Yeah. Oh, so demanding.
Smells good.
Is it?
Making me hungry.
Good. Well, you keep saying that, and then I keep offering you food, and
know,
you're like, actually,
and then
nah.
I look at the food, and I'm like, that's a lot of oil. I don't know. Oily.
Fair enough. You mean delicious food, Mum? So, we are getting there. I'm going to tip this into a bowl, and so I'm going to take the meat out and put it aside. That's really hot. That's hot. So you see the brown bits? I am going to now give this a little treatment. So it was about 250 grams of silver beet, 3 large pinches of fenugreek. I'm also going to season this, so a little bit of salt, teaspoon, same of chili, hing, but no cloves. There'll be too much clove in the dish. And basically that's soaking up that yummy lamb fat, but I'm going to cook it out a little bit on high. So we were just talking about clove and not adding it twice. So we added everything else, we reiterated from the lamb to the greens. But when it comes to structural spices, so structural spices are the category of spice that are used whole. So cinnamon quills, cassia bark, black cardamom pods, green cardamom pods, cloves, star anise, mace flower. But you can see because they have this, very strong structural component, they take longer to contribute or make their contribution to masala aromatically. But once that aroma is bedded, it's really fixed and very strong. So because we've already got clove in the lamb, that's cooked through the lamb. It's going to cook through again with the masala. It'll cook through the pressure cooking process, and each time it's going to enunciate itself, because its form means that its aroma is able to hold space through a much longer and harder cooking process than, say, a chili powder or a salt or a powdered asafoetida. So, powdered spices can be quite forgiving. Whole spices, much less so. That's the moral of that story. All right, now while that's cooking, why don't we gather up the spices for the main masala. So we don't need clove. We may need a little more salt, but we'll use a pink salt. Treat it a little differently. A little bit of bay leaf, some turmeric. I'd like it to be really earthy and seedy, so intense in terms of texture. So we're going to use fennel seed, cumin seed, nigella seed, arjuan seed. I'm going to use a little bit of coriander powder to sort of smooth out the angles in all of those different textures. Coriander powder can work like pollen, ephemeral, or it can work as a mortar where it's actually holding shapes together and smoothing out any of the contrast between those shapes. I feel like some acidity is in order, so I'm going to use amchur and sumac. Maybe not. I'm going to use amchur, which is a dried green mango powder. This is quite heavily weighted into the earth spice category, and we can do that because in this way that we've used the silver beet with the dried methi, they actually work together. So we've got seediness, but we've also got that beautiful fresh leafy structure as well. So you can see that that's started to dry out and change texture. So it's got more of a fried appearance. It's not raw anymore. That's how we want it to look. I would like to taste it. It should be a little meaty actually, which would be exciting. Yummy. Yep. Salty, spicy. Yeah, silver beet, but not silver beet. It's not really meaty, but it does have weight, and that's from the lamb fat. We're going to spice this component of the dish, and this is going to carry through into the lamb. We're going to use the silver beet as a carrier. 2 bay leaves, half a teaspoon of turmeric, a nice heaped teaspoon of amchur, 2 big, well, it's kind of like a tablespoon really, or a tablespoon and a bit of coriander powder, nigella seed, a teaspoon, fennel seed, a teaspoon, cumin seed, 2 teaspoons, arjuan seed, half a teaspoon, pink salt, half a teaspoon, and a little bit extra chili, half a teaspoon. I'm just going to taste that. Turn it off for a sec. So earthy. Really, really punchy. That already looks amazing. But to make it more amazing, I'm going to use some whey that I reserved from making paneer. If you don't have whey, you can use vegetable stock, water. So that's like a half a cup. But the whey has a lemony quality, and it will also tenderize the meat further in the cooking process, in the pressure cooking process. I don't want it to be super liquid, so have a look at that. I'm actually going to try and pressure cook it just with that amount of water. So you can see that basically with its own fat plus about 2/3 of a cup of whey, it's not swimming in liquid. All right, so that is going to go on to pressure cook it until we hear 2 whistles, and we'll turn it down from high. And then once we've turned it down from high, I think I'm going to give it about 25 minutes. All right. So that pressure cooked actually for around, it's probably around 25 minutes. So I always talk about letting a pressure cooker depressurize on its own. One of the ways to accelerate it is to run it under cold water. So you're not releasing the steam, you're just cooling the pot enough that it releases. And I'm going to do that now. It does affect the protein. Like if I were to leave that to do it on its own, it will be a little more tender. But that is super tender. I have to wait a sec, because it is hot. Yum. Oh, that's super tangy and meaty. That is so delicious. Holy moly. So I put a lot of amchur in there, the green mango powder, which has a tang. But then on top of that, I used whey. And the whey is itself has a lovely soft acidity, and it will like calls to like. So it will draw forward any acidity that's also in the masala. Oh my God, this is so hot. I'm so sorry. Oh, that's exceptional. I'm giving myself a big pat on the back for that one. It's beautifully salted. The spinach and the fenugreek, the masalas run through that, and out the other side you get a taste of India. It's like, it's quite bold. It's got that lovely pungent quality. I always think it's such a weird way to describe flavor, but I always think of fenugreek as being like dried fenugreek as being ethnic. You know, when people talk about ethnic sort of as a word, it's a bit like the other, like that tastes like the Gunju family. Complex, delicious, bright, a little bit combative.